Oluwaseun Adebayo's journey began far from the manicured lawns of Millbrook in the bustling city of Lagos, Nigeria. Born in 1990 to a family struggling to make ends meet, Oluwaseun, or Sean, as he would later be known, learned early that survival often meant bending the rules. His father, a street vendor, and his mother, a seamstress, instilled in him a hunger for a better life, one that seemed perpetually out of reach in the crowded streets of Lagos. By his early 20s, Sean had exhausted every legal avenue to leave Nigeria. His applications for student visas were repeatedly denied, and work permits seemed an impossible dream. It was during this time of frustration that Sean fell in with a group of young men who specialized in what they euphemistically called alternative immigration strategies. Sean's first attempt in 2018 ended in failure when his tourist visa application was denied. Undeterred, he spent the next 2 years building a more convincing cover story. He created a fake business, fabricated bank statements, and even paid for a sham sponsor in the U.S. In 2020, his persistence paid off. He was granted a 6-month tourist visa. Arriving in New York with nothing but a small suitcase and big dreams, Sean quickly realized that his fantasy of America clashed harshly with reality. The city was unforgiving, the people cold, and opportunities for an illegal immigrant were scarce. He bounced from one menial job to another, always looking over his shoulder, fearful of deportation. It was during this time that Sean refined his strategy. He observed that older, lonely women were often more susceptible to his charms, and less likely to scrutinize his background too closely. He practiced his seduction techniques in bars and community centers, each encounter a rehearsal for the performance of a lifetime. With a mixture of desperation and determination, Sean boarded a bus to California in the summer of 2022. He arrived in Millbrook with a singular goal: to find a woman he could marry quickly, secure his green card, and then discard. Little did he know that in pursuing this cold-hearted plan, he would set in motion a chain of events that would lead to tragedy. Gertrude Whitaker was born Gertrude Ellington in 1962, in the very town of Millbrook, where she would spend most of her life. The only child of a high school teacher and a nurse, Gertrude grew up surrounded by books and a love for learning. Her childhood was marked by quiet afternoons in the town library, where she would lose herself in worlds far beyond the boundaries of her small town. In 2020, Gertrude retired from her position as head librarian. While she looked forward to having more time for her hobbies, gardening, birdwatching, and of course reading, she soon found retirement to be lonelier than she had anticipated. Her days, once filled with the bustle of the library and the company of co-workers and patrons, now stretched before her in quiet solitude. Gertrude's friends and family encouraged her to travel, to take classes, to embrace this new chapter of her life. But for Gertrude, the thought of venturing out alone into the world was daunting. She had spent her life in the company of books and the safety of routine. Now, at 60, she yearned for companionship, but feared she had missed her chance at finding love again. Little did Gertrude know that fate, or perhaps misfortune, was about to introduce her to a man who would change the course of her life. As the autumn of 2022 approached, Gertrude Whitaker was a woman poised between contentment and longing, unaware that she was about to become entangled in a web of deceit that would ultimately lead to her demise. The crisp air of early September 2022 brought with it a sense of anticipation in Millbrook. The annual Harvest Festival was in full swing, transforming the town square into a bustling marketplace of local produce, crafts, and community spirit. It was here, amidst the cheerful chaos of the festival, that Gertrude Whitaker and Sean Adebayo's paths would fatefully cross. Gertrude, volunteering at the Friends of the Library booth, was in her element. Surrounded by donated books and chatting with old acquaintances, she felt a sense of purpose that had been missing since her retirement. Her hair caught the afternoon sun as she leaned over to arrange a display of mystery novels. Sean, having arrived in Millbrook just days earlier, was strategically positioning himself to meet potential targets. He wandered through the festival, his eyes scanning the crowd, looking for women who fit his criteria: older, seemingly well off, and most importantly, alone. As Sean approached the book booth, his gaze fell upon Gertrude. He noted her tasteful jewelry and well-kept appearance, indicators of financial stability. More importantly, he saw the flash of loneliness in her eyes as she watched couples and families enjoying the festival together. Seizing the moment, Sean struck up a conversation, feigning interest in American literature. Gertrude, delighted to share her knowledge, was immediately drawn to the young man's apparent enthusiasm and charming accent. She found herself explaining the nuances of Hemingway and Fitzgerald to an attentive listener, something she hadn't done since her library days. Their conversation flowed easily, touching on books, travel, and life in Millbrook. Sean carefully wove in details of his fabricated background, a successful businessman exploring small-town America, while showing genuine interest in Gertrude's life and experiences. As the afternoon wore on, Gertrude felt a spark of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. Sean's attention made her feel seen, appreciated in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. When he asked if she might show him around town sometime, Gertrude surprised herself by eagerly agreeing. Little did Gertrude know that this chance encounter, which felt like the beginning of a sweet autumn romance, was in fact the first move in Sean's calculated game of deception. As they parted ways, promising to meet again soon, the wheels of tragedy were already in motion. In the weeks following their meeting at the Harvest Festival, Sean orchestrated a whirlwind romance that left Gertrude breathless and the town of Millbrook buzzing with gossip. He approached the courtship with the precision of a master strategist, each move carefully planned to win Gertrude's heart and the community's approval. Their first date was a picnic in Millbrook Park, where Sean arrived with a basket filled with Gertrude's favorite foods, information he had gleaned from their initial conversation. He listened intently as Gertrude shared stories of her life, mentally noting details he could use to deepen their connection. When he spoke of his own life, he painted a picture of a successful, cultured man who had everything but love. Sean's charm offensive extended beyond Gertrude. He made a point of befriending the locals, volunteering at community events, and even attending services at Gertrude's church. His natural charisma and seemingly genuine interest in small-town life quickly endeared him to many in Millbrook. For Gertrude, each day brought a new surprise. Sean would leave flowers on her doorstep, send handwritten notes quoting her favorite poets, and plan thoughtful outings that catered to her interests. He took her to a nearby vineyard for wine tasting, knowing her fondness for a good Merlot. He arranged a private tour of a historical library in the next town, combining their shared love of books with a romantic day trip. As autumn progressed, so did their relationship. Gertrude found herself opening up, sharing hopes and dreams she had long since buried. Sean played the part of the attentive listener, the supportive partner who encouraged her to embrace life fully. He spoke of a future together, of adventures they could share, reigniting a sense of possibility in Gertrude's heart. However, not everyone in Millbrook was swept up in the romance. Gertrude's closest friend, Beatrice Holloway, watched the relationship unfold with growing concern. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Sean, that his devotion to Gertrude seemed too perfect, too calculated. Gertrude's nephew, Daniel, who lived in San Francisco, also expressed reservations when he heard about the relationship during their weekly phone calls. The age difference and the speed at which the relationship was progressing raised red flags for him. But Gertrude, caught up in the intoxicating rush of new love, brushed off their concerns. She felt rejuvenated, desirable, and more alive than she had in years. When Sean proposed after just 2 months of dating, presenting her with a stunning diamond ring, Gertrude said yes without hesitation. As news of their engagement spread through Millbrook, opinions were divided. Some celebrated the autumn-spring romance, while others whispered their doubts. Unbeknownst to all, the stage was being set for a confrontation that would shatter the idyllic facade of their whirlwind courtship. While Sean Adebayo played the role of devoted fiancé to perfection in public, behind closed doors, he led a double life fraught with deception and calculated moves. His small rented room on the outskirts of Millbrook became the command center for his elaborate scheme. Late at night, after charming dinners with Gertrude or community events, Sean would return to his room and connect with his co-conspirators back in Nigeria. Using encrypted messaging apps and voice-altered video calls, he would report on his progress and seek advice on navigating the complexities of U.S. immigration law. His main contact was Adebayo Okonkwo, the mastermind behind the operation, who had helped Sean and others like him orchestrate similar schemes across America. Okonkwo, a former lawyer with a sharp mind for exploiting legal loopholes, provided Sean with forged documents, coached him on answering potential questions from immigration officials, and constantly reminded him of the stakes involved. Sean's room was a testament to his duplicity. One drawer contained love letters and mementos from his time with Gertrude, while another held fake passports, falsified bank statements, and a burner phone used solely for communicating with his Nigerian contacts. He meticulously documented every interaction with Gertrude and influential people in Millbrook, creating a paper trail to support his fabricated identity. The pressure of maintaining his facade occasionally showed cracks in Sean's carefully constructed persona. There were moments when Gertrude's genuine affection caused pangs of guilt, quickly suppressed by reminders of his ultimate goal. He had come too far, risked too much, to let emotions derail his plans now. Sean's double life led to several close calls that threatened to unravel everything. Once, while on a date with Gertrude at a local restaurant, he spotted a man he recognized from his time in New York, another Nigerian involved in similar schemes. Sean quickly steered Gertrude to another section of the restaurant, making up an excuse about a draft, his heart pounding as he prayed the man hadn't noticed him. Another time, Gertrude dropped by his room unannounced, bearing homemade cookies. Sean had barely managed to hide his incriminating documents before letting her in, forcing a smile as cold sweat beaded on his forehead. Perhaps the closest call came during a dinner with Gertrude's nephew Daniel, who had come to visit from San Francisco. Daniel, works in tech and analytics, asked pointed questions about Sean's background and business dealings. Sean deflected with practiced ease, but the encounter left him shaken. He spent that night on a lengthy call with Okonkwo, strategizing how to handle similar situations in the future. As the wedding date approached, Sean's communications with his Nigerian contacts intensified. They discussed the next steps: how to secure the green card, the optimal time to initiate divorce proceedings, and strategies for moving on to the next target. Sean assured them that everything was proceeding according to plan, that Gertrude suspected nothing. But even as he confidently laid out his strategy to Okonkwo and the others, a small voice in the back of Sean's mind whispered doubts. He had underestimated the complexity of human emotions, both Gertrude's and, unexpectedly, his own. As he ended the call and stared at his reflection in the darkened window, Sean wondered if he was truly prepared for the final act of his deception. As October gave way to November, the town of Millbrook buzzed with excitement over the upcoming nuptials of Gertrude Whitaker and Sean Adebayo. The couple had decided on a quick wedding, citing their desire to start their new life together as soon as possible. This haste, while raising eyebrows among some, was attributed to the passion of their whirlwind romance. Gertrude threw herself into the wedding preparations with an enthusiasm that surprised even her closest friends. She seemed to have a new lease on life, her eyes sparkling with joy as she pored over bridal magazines and flitted from one appointment to another. She chose an elegant, age-appropriate gown in soft ivory and spent hours at the local florist selecting the perfect autumn-themed bouquet. Sean, for his part, played the role of the eager groom-to-be with Oscar-worthy precision. He accompanied Gertrude to cake tastings, offered opinions on color schemes, and charmed the various vendors with his wit and seeming devotion to his bride. Privately, however, each decision was calculated to speed up the process and minimize scrutiny. The couple decided to hold the ceremony at Millbrook's historic Elm Street Chapel, with a reception to follow at the town's quaint Rosewood Inn. Gertrude was touched when Sean suggested they make a donation to the local library in lieu of a gift registry, not realizing this was Sean's way of further ingratiating himself with the community. As the wedding day drew nearer, Gertrude's excitement was tinged with moments of anxiety. She confided in her friend Beatrice about fleeting doubts. Was she being foolish to marry so quickly? Was the age difference too great? But each time she would shake off these concerns, choosing to focus on the happiness Sean had brought into her life. Sean, meanwhile, felt the pressure mounting. He made secret phone calls to Okonkwo, finalizing details of what would happen after the wedding. He began to prepare for the next phase, presenting himself as the devoted husband to immigration authorities. Every night, he rehearsed his answers to potential questions, determined not to let anything slip. Just days before the wedding, Gertrude's nephew Daniel arrived in town. His presence made Sean noticeably tense, though he hid it well beneath his usual charm. Daniel's probing questions and skeptical glances were a constant reminder of the precariousness of Sean's position. As the final arrangements fell into place, a sense of inevitability settled over Millbrook. The stage was set for a joyous union, but fate, and Sean's web of lies, had other plans. The countdown to the wedding became a ticking time bomb, its detonation set to shatter the autumn calm of this unsuspecting town. The day before the wedding dawned crisp and clear, the kind of perfect autumn morning that seemed to promise new beginnings. Gertrude woke early, her mind already racing with last-minute details and excited anticipation. As she went about her morning routine, she hummed softly to herself, pausing occasionally to admire her engagement ring in the soft morning light. It was during one of these moments, as she was straightening up her bedroom, that fate intervened. Gertrude noticed Sean's jacket draped over a chair. He had left it behind the previous evening after a final meeting with the wedding planner. Always the neat organizer, she picked it up to hang it properly. As she lifted the jacket, a small, folded piece of paper fluttered to the floor. Gertrude bent to retrieve it, assuming it was a receipt or perhaps a note related to the wedding. But as her eyes scanned the unfolded paper, her world tilted on its axis. The document was a printed email, its contents a cryptic mix of instructions and codes. Phrases like, "target secured," and "proceed with extraction post-ceremony" jumped out at her. There were mentions of money transfers, fake documents, and most disturbingly, a timeline for dissolving the union. Gertrude's hands trembled as she read and reread the email. Her mind, sharp from years of analyzing literature, quickly began to piece together the horrifying truth. The man she thought she knew, the man she was set to marry in less than 24 hours, was not who he claimed to be. In a daze, Gertrude made her way to her home office. With shaking fingers, she typed Sean's name into a search engine, this time digging deeper than she ever had before. She found nothing about his supposed business successes, no trace of the life he had described to her. Instead, she uncovered warnings about marriage fraud schemes targeting older women in small towns. As the morning wore on, Gertrude's shock gave way to a myriad of emotions: betrayal, anger, humiliation, and a deep, aching sadness. She thought of all the moments they had shared, the dreams they had discussed, now tainted by the poison of deception. She considered calling Beatrice or her nephew Daniel, but pride held her back. How could she admit that they had been right to be suspicious? How could she face the pity and the "I told you so" comments that would surely follow? As the grandfather clock in her living room chimed noon, Gertrude made a decision. She would confront Sean herself. She needed to hear the truth from his lips, to understand why he had targeted her, to know if any part of their relationship had been real. With a resolve born of anger and heartbreak, Gertrude composed herself and picked up her phone. Her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. She left a message asking Sean to come over immediately. She said she had an urgent question about the wedding, knowing he wouldn't suspect the storm that was about to break. As she waited for Sean to arrive, Gertrude stood by her living room window, watching the autumn leaves dance in the breeze. She felt as if she were standing on the edge of a precipice, about to plunge into an unknown abyss. Little did she know that this confrontation would lead to consequences far more tragic than a broken heart and shattered dreams. The sound of tires on gravel announced Sean's arrival. Gertrude watched from the window as he bounded up the front steps, a bouquet of her favorite flowers in hand. His smile, once charming, now seemed sinister to her newly opened eyes. She steeled herself for the confrontation to come. Sean arrived home bearing a surprise, calling out cheerfully for Gertrude. When she emerged from the living room, her carefully controlled expression made his smile fade. He asked about her urgent phone call, but instead of answering, she questioned his true identity. Confused, Sean tried to reassure her, but Gertrude confronted him with a damning email she'd discovered. The color drained from his face as she exposed his deception. He had targeted her for a green card marriage, reporting his progress to accomplices. Sean's charm gave way to desperate pleading. He claimed that while it had started as a scheme, his feelings had become genuine. Gertrude responded with bitter laughter, asking if his love had been real while he planned to divorce her after getting his green card. His desperation turned to anger as he defended his actions, speaking of survival and having nothing. But Gertrude, now crying, rejected his justifications. When she ordered him to leave, panic crept into his voice. He grabbed her arm, begging her to reconsider, while she struggled to pull away, her fear mounting alongside her anger. Their struggle escalated, both driven by desperation. Gertrude to free herself from Sean's grasp and the web of lies he had spun, Sean to salvage his plan and his chance at a new life. In the heat of the moment, neither was fully aware of how close they had come to the top of the stairs. It happened in an instant. Gertrude wrenched her arm free with unexpected force. Sean, caught off balance, instinctively reached out to steady himself. His hand connected with Gertrude's shoulder, a reflexive push that under normal circumstances would have been harmless. But they were not in normal circumstances. Gertrude, already off balance from the struggle, felt herself falling backwards. Time seemed to slow as she teetered at the top of the stairs, her eyes locking with Sean's in a moment of shared horror before gravity took hold. The sound of Gertrude's body tumbling down the stairs echoed through the house, followed by a sickening silence that marked the devastating turn their confrontation had taken. After Gertrude fell down the stairs, Sean stood paralyzed at the top, the silence broken only by his pounding heart. When she weakly called out that she couldn't move, he rushed to her side. She lay crumpled on the floor, her hair spread around her head, her eyes filled with pain as she begged him to call an ambulance. Though Sean apologized frantically, claiming it was an accident, he hesitated when pulling out his phone. His mind raced with the consequences. Calling for help would destroy his chances at a new life and likely lead to his deportation. As Gertrude's breathing grew more labored, she pleaded with increasing desperation. But Sean had made his terrible choice. Tears streamed down his face as he apologized one final time, unable to bring himself to make the call. Betrayal flooded Gertrude's eyes as she realized he meant to let her die. Sean backed away, his survival instinct overriding any genuine feelings he'd developed. He moved methodically through the house, erasing traces of his presence while Gertrude's breathing grew weaker. When her voice, now just a whisper, called out one last time, Sean had already committed to his path. With a final glance at the woman he'd planned to marry, he slipped quietly out of the house. Outside, the autumn day continued undisturbed. Birds chirped, leaves rustled in the breeze, oblivious to the tragedy that had unfolded within the house. Sean walked to his car, his movements mechanical, his mind already formulating his next move. As he drove away from Gertrude's house for the last time, Sean glanced in his rearview mirror. The image of Gertrude, lying broken at the bottom of the stairs, was seared into his memory. In that moment, he realized that in his desperate pursuit of a better life, he had lost something fundamental to his humanity. The quiet streets of Millbrook slipped by as Sean drove, the picturesque town now a backdrop to a tragedy of his own making. Behind him, in the house that had almost become his home, Gertrude Whitaker took her final breaths, alone and betrayed by the man she had dared to love. The discovery of Gertrude Whitaker's body sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community of Millbrook. It was Beatrice Holloway, concerned when Gertrude didn't answer her calls on the morning of what should have been her wedding day, who found her friend's lifeless form at the bottom of the stairs. The police arrived quickly, transforming the quaint house into a crime scene. Detective Liam Reeves, a veteran of the Millbrook Police Department, took charge of the investigation. Initial observations suggested an accidental fall, but something about the scene didn't sit right with Reeves. As news of Gertrude's death spread, so did questions about the whereabouts of her fiancé, Sean Adebayo. His conspicuous absence raised suspicions, turning him from grieving partner to prime suspect in a matter of hours. The investigation uncovered a trail of inconsistencies in Sean's background. His business contacts proved non-existent. His past addresses led nowhere. It became clear that Sean Adebayo was not who he had claimed to be. Gertrude's nephew, Daniel, proved to be a valuable asset to the investigation. His tech expertise helped uncover digital breadcrumbs that Sean had failed to erase completely. Emails, money transfers, and encrypted messages began to paint a picture of a complex fraud operation with international connections. After 2 years on the run, Sean Adebayo was finally apprehended in March 2024 at a small airport in Mexico, attempting to board a flight to Colombia using forged documents. Following his extradition to California, he faced trial for the death of Gertrude Whitaker. In a packed courtroom in Sacramento, with Gertrude's nephew Daniel and her friend Beatrice in attendance, Judge Marion Reeves sentenced Adebayo to 25 years to life for second-degree murder, with additional charges for fraud and identity theft. As he was led away in handcuffs, the former charmer's confident facade had crumbled completely, leaving only the hollow shell of a man whose desperate gambit for a better life had destroyed both his dreams and an innocent woman's life.